We're often taught from a young age that being kind is one of the most important virtues we can have. We hear phrases like treat others the way you want to be treated, and if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. And there's a lot of truth to that. Kindness has the power to change lives, strengthen connections, and create trust. It's one of the most beautiful expressions of humanity. But what we don't talk about enough is the cost of kindness when it's given without limits. When kindness becomes an obligation rather than a choice, it starts to drain us. We find ourselves saying yes when we really mean no. We agree to help even when we're already stretched thin. We sacrifice our time, our energy, and sometimes even our values just to avoid disappointing others or being perceived as unkind. It starts small, taking on extra work for a colleague who's behind, staying late to help when you're already exhausted, or constantly being the one who smooths over conflicts in the team. But over time, this kind of limitless kindness chips away at us. And here's the dangerous part: on the surface, it looks noble. People might see you as dependable, generous, the one who's always there to help. But inside, you might be running on empty. That constant giving without any boundaries creates an imbalance. It starts to feel like you're pouring from a cup that never gets refilled, and eventually there's nothing left to give. What happens then? Resentment builds. You might start to feel taken advantage of, even by people you genuinely care about. You begin to question why others don't offer the same kindness back, why they don't notice how exhausted you are. The emotional toll starts to show up in other areas of life: frustration at work, tension in personal relationships, and most importantly, a disconnection from yourself. The thing about kindness is it's most powerful when it comes from a place of choice, not obligation. But when we stretch ourselves thin in an attempt to be kind to everyone, we stop choosing, we start reacting. We say yes out of guilt, fear of disappointing others, or fear of conflict. And that's not kindness. That's self-betrayal. In leadership, this kind of unchecked kindness can be even more damaging. Leaders who try to please everyone often end up pleasing no one. They avoid hard conversations, hesitate to give constructive feedback, and prioritize being liked over being respected. Teams under this kind of leadership might feel good initially, after all. Who doesn't like a kind boss? But over time, the lack of clear boundaries and honest communication creates confusion and frustration. Expectations become unclear, accountability weakens, and the entire team suffers. But it's not just about the workplace. In our personal lives, we face the same risks. Constantly putting others first can lead to burnout, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. It erodes our sense of self-worth because we start measuring our value by how much we can give rather than who we are. We live in a world where being liked often feels like the ultimate currency. From social media likes to workplace approval, there's an underlying pressure to be agreeable, to fit in, to say the right things at the right time, even if those things don't align with what we truly believe. People-pleasing becomes second nature. We learn to read the room, adapt our behavior, and smooth over conflicts to maintain harmony. It feels easier, safer. But over time, this constant need to please others starts to pull us away from who we really are. People-pleasing is a survival mechanism. It's rooted in the human desire to belong. From an evolutionary standpoint, being part of a group meant safety. Rejection could literally be life-threatening. So we develop behaviors to help us stay connected, agreeing with the majority, avoiding conflict, making ourselves likable. And while society has evolved, that deep-rooted need for approval remains. We find ourselves saying yes when we want to say no, laughing at jokes we don't find funny, agreeing with ideas we don't believe in, all to avoid friction, to be accepted. But here's the thing: people-pleasing is a facade. It creates a version of ourselves that's tailored to what others expect, not who we truly are. Over time, the line between the real self and the curated self starts to blur. We become so used to managing others' perceptions that we lose touch with our own thoughts and desires. And while people might like this version of us, deep down, there's a nagging feeling they don't really know me. They like the person I'm pretending to be. In leadership, this dynamic becomes even more complex. Leaders who fall into the trap of people-pleasing often struggle with authenticity. They say what the team wants to hear, avoid hard conversations, and prioritize short-term harmony over long-term growth. It feels like they're being kind, keeping everyone happy, but in reality, it creates a fragile foundation. When a leader is focused on pleasing everyone, they lose sight of what truly matters: the mission, the values, and the people they're leading. Decisions become inconsistent, feedback becomes watered down, and trust starts to erode. Authenticity, on the other hand, is about alignment. It's when what you say, what you do, and what you believe are all in sync. Authentic leaders don't hide behind a mask of politeness or say what people want to hear just to be liked. They speak the truth even when it's uncomfortable. They set clear expectations, give honest feedback, and make decisions that align with their values, not just what's popular. But authenticity isn't about being brutally honest or dismissive. It's about being real while still being kind. It means having the courage to say, I disagree or I don't know, without fearing that it will make you less likable. It's about showing up as your true self, flaws and all, and trusting that the right people will respect you for it. The irony of people-pleasing is that while it's designed to make others like us, it often has the opposite effect. People sense an authenticity. They might not be able to articulate it, but they feel it. It shows up in small ways: the overly agreeable coworker who never takes a stand, the leader who nods along but never follows through, the friend who says yes to every plan but flakes at the last minute. Over time, this erodes trust because people don't know where you really stand. Authenticity, though, creates deeper connections. When you show up as your true self, you give others permission to do the same. It fosters an environment where people feel safe to be honest, to take risks, and to grow. And in leadership, that kind of environment is where real innovation and trust thrive. People-pleasing is rooted in fear, the fear of rejection, of not being enough, of conflict. Authenticity, on the other hand, is rooted in courage. The courage to be seen, to be heard, and to stand firm in your values even when it's uncomfortable. It's not about being perfect or having all the answers. It's about being real. There's a difference between being nice and being respected, though we often confuse the two. Niceness is easy. It's surface level, often polite to a fault, and designed to make interactions feel smooth and pleasant. It's the smile when you don't mean it, the polite sure when you really want to say no, the avoidance of uncomfortable truths just to keep the peace. Niceness is the social lubricant that makes daily life easier, but it doesn't build trust, and it doesn't foster real connection. Respect, on the other hand, goes deeper. It's not about how pleasant you are in the moment. It's about how consistently you uphold your values and treat others with integrity, even when it's difficult. Niceness often comes from a desire to be liked. It's about presenting yourself in a way that makes others feel good, even if it means holding back your true thoughts or feelings. Think about how many times you've said something like it's fine when it really wasn't, or how often you've nodded in agreement just to avoid conflict. That's niceness at work. It smooths over tension in the short term, but over time it creates a disconnect. People might like you, but they don't really know where you stand. They sense the inauthenticity, even if they can't quite put their finger on it. Respect, however, is rooted in honesty. It's built on a foundation of clear communication, consistency, and integrity. When someone respects you, it's not because you've always been agreeable or easy to get along with. It's because you've been real with them. You've had the hard conversations, set clear boundaries, and stood up for what you believe in, even when it wasn't the popular choice. Respect isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about handling it with maturity and fairness. In leadership, this distinction becomes critical. Nice leaders are often well-liked. They avoid confrontation, they sugarcoat feedback, and they do their best to keep everyone happy. But here's the problem: when leaders prioritize niceness over respect, they end up creating environments where accountability fades, expectations blur, and growth stalls. Employees might feel comfortable, but they won't feel challenged or motivated. They won't know where they stand or how they can improve because the leader is too focused on being liked to give honest, constructive feedback. Respectful leaders, on the other hand, understand the importance of clarity and honesty. They don't shy away from difficult conversations because they know that's where real growth happens. They hold their teams accountable, not because they want to be harsh, but because they believe in their potential. And when they give praise, it carries more weight because it's rooted in authenticity, not just a desire to be nice. The same applies in personal relationships. Being nice might help you avoid conflict in the short term, but it often leads to resentment in the long term. How many times have you agreed to something, a social event, a favor, an extra task just to avoid seeming rude, only to feel annoyed or drained afterward? That's the hidden cost of niceness. It prioritizes immediate comfort over long-term honesty. Respect in relationships means being upfront about your needs and boundaries. It means saying no when you need to, even if it disappoints someone. It means being willing to have the hard conversations, not to hurt the other person, but to maintain a foundation of honesty and trust. Respect creates stronger, more resilient relationships because both parties know where they stand. There's no second guessing, no walking on eggshells. One of the biggest misconceptions is that respect and kindness can't coexist, that being honest or setting boundaries somehow makes you cold or harsh. But that's not true. In fact, the most respectful thing you can do for someone is to be honest with them, even when it's hard. It shows that you value them enough to be real, that you trust them enough to handle the truth, and that you care about the relationship enough to invest in its long-term health, rather than just its short-term comfort. Niceness is about avoiding discomfort both for yourself and others. Respect is about embracing it when necessary, knowing that it leads to deeper understanding, growth, and trust. And while niceness might earn you more smiles and surface-level approval, respect builds stronger, more meaningful connections that last. Kindness is often seen as an essential trait in leadership. We expect leaders to be empathetic, understanding, and supportive. And that's true. Great leaders do lead with kindness. But there's a critical distinction that's often overlooked. Kindness without standards isn't leadership. It's appeasement. And when leaders focus solely on being kind, without holding people accountable or upholding clear expectations, they undermine not only their authority but the strength of the entire team. At its core, leadership is about guiding people toward a shared vision. It's about creating an environment where individuals can grow, collaborate, and achieve more together than they could alone. Kindness plays a huge role in that. It fosters trust, builds connection, and shows that you value your team as people, not just as employees. But kindness without boundaries or standards can erode the very foundation it's meant to strengthen. When leaders prioritize being kind over being clear, they create a culture of ambiguity. Expectations become fuzzy, accountability weakens, and perhaps most damaging, mediocrity starts to creep in. Think about it. If a leader avoids giving honest feedback because they don't want to hurt someone's feelings, what message does that send? It tells the team that meeting expectations is optional. It communicates that performance doesn't really matter as long as you're nice about it. Over time, this erodes trust not just in the leader, but within the team itself. High-performing teams thrive on clarity. They need to know what's expected of them, what success looks like, and where they stand in relation to those goals. Leaders who focus too much on kindness without pairing it with clear standards fail to provide that structure. It may feel good in the moment after all. No one likes difficult conversations, but it sets the team up for long-term failure. People begin to coast, standards drop, and those who are high performers start to feel frustrated. Why should they work hard if mediocrity is rewarded equally? This dynamic also impacts culture. When leaders don't enforce standards, it breeds resentment. Ironically, the people the leader is trying to be kind to, the ones they're shielding from criticism, often end up feeling more disconnected. Deep down, most people want to improve. They want to grow and develop in their roles. Honest feedback, even when it's hard to hear, is a gift. It shows that the leader believes in their potential and is willing to invest in their growth. Without that, team members can feel overlooked or undervalued. There's also the issue of fairness. Leaders who use kindness as a shield to avoid tough decisions often end up being inconsistent. They let one person slide on deadlines but come down harder on another. They give praise freely, even when it's not earned, in an attempt to keep morale high. But this kind of inconsistent leadership breeds confusion and frustration. Teams don't just want kindness, they want fairness, clarity, and honesty. A leader who balances kindness with clear standards creates a culture of respect. It's not about being harsh or overly critical, it's about being honest in a way that empowers. It's saying, I care about you and your growth, and that's why I'm giving you this feedback. It's about recognizing potential and pushing people to rise to it, even when that means having uncomfortable conversations. Consider the difference between a coach who constantly praises a player, telling them they're doing great even when they're making mistakes, and a coach who gives direct, constructive feedback while also encouraging them. Which one helps the player grow? The same principle applies in leadership. Kindness without standards creates a false sense of security. It might feel good in the short term, but it prevents real growth and development. Leaders also need to apply these standards to themselves. It's easy to fall into the trap of wanting to be liked, to avoid difficult decisions in the name of kindness. But leadership isn't about popularity, it's about responsibility. Holding yourself to high standards sets the tone for the entire team. When leaders model accountability, integrity, and clarity, they give their teams permission to do the same. And there's a deeper truth here. Kindness that lacks honesty isn't really kindness at all. It's avoidance. True kindness means caring enough to be real even when it's uncomfortable. It means seeing someone's potential and pushing them to reach it. It means setting clear expectations and holding people to them, not out of judgment or criticism, but out of belief in what they're capable of. When we think of love in the context of leadership, we often associate it with kindness, compassion, and empathy, and rightfully so. Leading with care fosters trust, strengthens relationships, and builds environments where people feel valued. But there's another side of love in leadership that's equally important and often misunderstood: tough love. It's the kind of love that doesn't just comfort but challenges. It pushes people to grow, to stretch beyond their limits, and to become the best versions of themselves. It's not always pleasant in the moment, but in the long run, tough love builds stronger, more resilient teams. Tough love is rooted in care, but it's expressed through honesty and accountability. It's the willingness to have the hard conversations, to point out blind spots, and to hold people to high standards, not because you want, because you believe in their potential. It's easy to offer praise and encouragement, but it takes real courage to say you're capable of more or this isn't your best work. Those conversations can be uncomfortable, but they're often the catalyst for real growth. In leadership, avoiding tough love in favor of constant kindness may feel like the compassionate choice, but it often does more harm than good. When leaders hesitate to give honest feedback out of fear of upsetting someone, they rob that person of the opportunity to improve. It creates an environment where mediocrity is accepted, where mistakes go unaddressed, and where potential remains untapped. People might feel good in the short term, but over time they stagnate. And stagnation doesn't just impact the individual, it weakens the entire team. High-performing teams aren't built on comfort, they're built on challenge. They thrive in environments where feedback flows freely, where expectations are clear, and where people are pushed to grow. Tough love fosters this kind of culture. It creates a balance between support and challenge where people know their leader has their back, but will also call them out when they're not performing at their best. This balance builds trust. People respect leaders who are willing to be honest with them, even when it's hard, because it shows that the leader cares enough to invest in their development. Tough love also strengthens accountability. In teams where tough love is present, accountability isn't seen as a punishment, it's seen as a commitment to excellence. Everyone holds themselves and each other to high standards because they understand that it's not about being perfect, it's about constantly striving to improve. This kind of environment creates a sense of pride and ownership. People are more likely to take initiative, push their limits, and support one another because they know they're all working toward a shared goal. But tough love isn't about being harsh or overly critical. It's not about pointing out flaws without offering support. True tough love combines honesty with empathy. It's about delivering difficult feedback in a way that's constructive and respectful. It's saying, here's where you can improve, and here's how I'm going to help you get there. It's about being direct but also compassionate, recognizing that while the feedback may be hard to hear, it's coming from a place of care. Consider the best mentors or coaches you've ever had. Chances are they weren't the ones who simply praised you all the time. They were the ones who pushed you, who challenged you, who believed you could do more even when you doubted yourself. They didn't let you settle for less than your best because they saw your potential. That's tough love in action. In leadership, this kind of approach creates a ripple effect. When leaders model tough love, it encourages the team to adopt the same mindset. Team members begin to hold each other accountable, not out of criticism, but out of care. They start to challenge one another in healthy ways, pushing each other to grow and improve. This builds a culture of continuous development where feedback isn't feared but welcomed, and where challenges are seen as opportunities, not threats. Tough love also helps teams navigate conflict more effectively. In teams that avoid tough conversations, tension builds beneath the surface. Issues go unaddressed, frustrations mount, and eventually they explode in unhealthy ways. But in teams where tough love is practiced, conflicts are addressed head-on. People feel safe to speak openly and honestly because they know it's coming from a place of care, not malice. This kind of openness strengthens relationships and fosters deeper trust. There's also a personal growth aspect to tough love. It teaches resilience. When people are regularly challenged, they learn how to criticism, how to push through discomfort, and how to grow from failure. These are invaluable skills, not just in the workplace, but in life. Teams that experience tough love become stronger, more adaptable, and more capable of handling adversity. Tough love isn't always easy. It requires courage, empathy, and a deep commitment to the growth of others. It means being willing to risk short-term discomfort for long-term success. It means having the hard conversations, setting high standards, and holding people accountable not out of judgment, but out of care. It's about believing in people enough to push them beyond what they think they're capable of, knowing that in the end, it will make them stronger. In a world that often glorifies selflessness over commitment and constant availability, setting boundaries can feel like an act of rebellion. We're conditioned to believe that saying yes is the path to being seen as kind, cooperative, and dependable. We fear that saying no will make us appear selfish, unhelpful, or even rude. But here's the truth: setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's one of the most profound acts of self-respect. It's a declaration that your time, energy, and well-being are valuable, and that you're not willing to sacrifice them at the altar of people-pleasing or societal expectations. Boundaries are the invisible lines we draw around ourselves to protect our mental, emotional, and physical space. They define what we're willing to accept and what we're not, how we want to be treated, and where our limits lie. Without them, we become vulnerable to burnout, resentment, and emotional exhaustion. We stretch ourselves thin, saying yes to every request, meeting everyone else's needs while neglecting our own. Over time, this erodes our sense of self. We lose touch with what we want, what we need, and who we are. Self-respect begins with recognizing that you are worthy of care and consideration both from others and from yourself. It's about understanding that your time and energy are finite resources and that you have a right to decide how they're spent. When you set boundaries, you're not rejecting people, you're honoring yourself. You're saying, I matter, my needs matter, my well-being matters. That's not selfishness, that's self-awareness. But setting boundaries isn't always easy. It often brings up feelings of guilt, especially if you're used to being the person who's always available, always agreeable, always saying yes. We fear that by setting limits, we'll disappoint others or damage relationships. We worry about being perceived as difficult or unkind. But here's where a crucial shift in perspective needs to happen. Healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, not on one-sided sacrifice. The people who truly value you will respect your boundaries. And those who don't, that's often a reflection of their needs, not your worth. In leadership, the ability to set boundaries is even more critical. Leaders who fail to establish clear boundaries often find themselves overwhelmed, overworked, and burned out. They become the go-to person for every problem, every decision, every crisis. In trying to be everything to everyone, they end up being ineffective to everyone. But leaders who respect their own limits model that behavior for their teams. They create environments where boundaries are not only accepted but encouraged, where it's okay to say, I need time to think about this, or I can't take on more right now. This kind of culture promotes sustainability, reduces burnout, and fosters a healthier, more productive team dynamic. Setting boundaries also reinforces integrity. It ensures that your actions align with your values and priorities. When you constantly say yes to things that don't align with your goals or values, you dilute your focus and energy. You end up spending time on things that don't truly matter to you, leaving less room for the things that do. Boundaries help you stay true to yourself. They act as a compass, guiding you toward decisions that honor who you are and what you stand for. Boundaries also play a vital role in emotional health. Without them, we often absorb the emotions and problems of others, taking on responsibilities that aren't ours to carry. We become enmeshed in other people's issues, feeling obligated to fix, help, or save them even at the expense of our own well-being. But setting boundaries allows us to support others without losing ourselves in the process. It's saying, I care about you, but I also care about myself. I'm here for you, but I can't do everything for you. It creates a healthier balance in relationships, fostering mutual respect and responsibility. Another essential aspect of boundaries is that they help prevent resentment. When we consistently overextend ourselves, we start to feel taken advantage of, even if we were the ones who volunteered in the first place. Resentment builds when there's a disconnect between what we're giving and what we feel we're receiving. Setting clear boundaries prevents this dynamic. It ensures that when we do give our time, energy, or resources, it's done freely and willingly, not out of obligation or guilt. It's also important to recognize that boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges. They're not meant to isolate or push people away. They're meant to create healthier, more honest connections. When we set boundaries, we're being transparent about who we are, what we need, and how we function best. This level of honesty deepens relationships because it fosters trust. People know where they stand with us, and we know where we stand with them. Kindness is often celebrated as one of the most important virtues in human interaction. It's the glue that binds people together, creating trust, empathy, and understanding. In leadership, relationships, and everyday life, kindness plays a vital role in how we connect with others. But there's a subtle distinction that often goes unnoticed: the difference between kindness that empowers and kindness that enables. It's the fine line between helping someone grow and inadvertently holding them back. At its best, kindness uplifts. It empowers people to become better, stronger, and more capable. It offers support during tough times, guidance when someone is lost, and encouragement when they're on the brink of giving up. Empowering kindness is about helping people discover their own strength, not doing the heavy lifting for them. It's about providing tools, resources, and insights so that others can rise to their potential. But kindness can also have a shadow side when it crosses from empowering into enabling. Enabling kindness often feels like compassion on the surface, but instead of fostering growth, it creates dependency. It shields people from the natural consequences of their actions, preventing them from learning, adapting, and ultimately growing. It's the kind of kindness that says, I'll fix this for you, rather than let me show you how you can fix this yourself. This dynamic is especially prevalent in leadership and mentorship. Imagine a leader who constantly steps in to solve their team's problems. At first, it might seem like they're being supportive and helpful. They're making life easier for their employees, ensuring things run smoothly. But over time, this approach stifles growth. The team stops taking initiative. They rely on the leader to solve every issue, make every decision, and carry the weight of responsibility. Instead of building a strong, independent team, the leader inadvertently creates dependency. Empowering kindness in leadership looks very different. It's about guiding, not controlling. It's asking questions like, what do you think is the best solution? Or how would you handle the situation? It's giving people space to make decisions, even if they might make mistakes, because it's through those mistakes that real growth happens. Empowering kindness isn't about shielding people from failure, it's about supporting them through it, helping them learn, adapt, and emerge stronger on the other side. In personal relationships, the distinction between empowering and enabling kindness is just as critical. Think about a friend who's going through a difficult time. Maybe they're struggling at work, facing challenges in their personal life, or dealing with a tough decision. It's natural to want to step in and help to make things easier for them. But sometimes in our desire to be kind, we end up enabling patterns that aren't healthy. We might constantly offer solutions, cover for their mistakes, or make excuses on their behalf. While these actions may come from a place of care, they can prevent our friend from facing the reality of their situation and taking ownership of their growth. Empowering kindness in these moments looks different. It's about being present and supportive without taking over. It's listening deeply, offering perspective when asked, and encouraging them to find their own answers. It's saying, I'm here for you and I believe in your ability to handle this, rather than let me fix this for you. This kind of kindness fosters resilience, self-confidence, and personal growth. Another layer to this is how kindness intersects with accountability. Often, in an attempt to be kind, we avoid difficult conversations. We shy away from giving honest feedback because we don't want to hurt someone's feelings. But true kindness isn't about avoiding discomfort, it's about having the courage to speak the truth with empathy. When we provide honest, constructive feedback, we're giving someone the gift of growth. We're showing them that we care enough to help them improve, even if the conversation is hard. Enabling kindness avoids these conversations. It prioritizes short-term comfort over long-term growth. It tells someone they're doing fine when they're not. It overlooks patterns of behavior that are harmful or unproductive because addressing them feels awkward or uncomfortable. But in doing so, it holds people back. It keeps them stuck in place, unable to see where they need to grow or how they can improve. Kindness that empowers also requires setting boundaries. This might seem counterintuitive because we often associate kindness with selflessness, the idea that we should always be available, always giving, always saying yes. But without boundaries, kindness can quickly turn into overextending ourselves, leading to burnout and resentment. Setting limits allows us to give from a place of abundance rather than depletion. It ensures that our kindness is sustainable, thoughtful, and genuine rather than obligatory or draining. Boundaries also help prevent the enabling dynamic. When we have clear limits, we're less likely to take on responsibilities that aren't ours to carry. We're able to support others without losing ourselves in the process. It's the difference between saying, I'll take care of this for you, and saying, I'm here to support you while you figure this out. One fosters dependency, the other encourages growth. There's also a self-kindness aspect to this conversation. Empowering kindness isn't just something we extend to others, it's something we need to practice with ourselves. Often we're our own harshest critics, holding ourselves to impossible standards and berating ourselves for every mistake. But self-kindness doesn't mean letting ourselves off the hook or ignoring areas where we need to grow. It means acknowledging our flaws and challenges with compassion while also holding ourselves accountable. It's saying, I made a mistake, but I can learn from this rather than I'm a failure. Empowering kindness, whether directed at others or ourselves, is ultimately about fostering growth. It's about seeing people, including ourselves, not just for who they are now, but for who they can become. It's the kind of kindness that believes in potential and is willing to support the journey to reach it, even when that journey involves challenges, discomfort, and difficult lessons. When we approach kindness through this lens, we create stronger relationships, healthier teams, and more resilient individuals. We stop viewing kindness as simply making others feel good in the moment and start seeing it as a tool for long-term empowerment. It becomes less about comfort and more about growth, less about rescuing and more about elevating. And that shift makes all the difference. One of the greatest challenges we face in life is the need for acceptance. From an early age, we're wired to seek approval from parents, teachers, friends, and society at large. It feels good to be liked. It reassures us that we're doing something right, that we belong, that we're valued. But this natural desire for connection often comes with a hidden cost. In our pursuit of being liked, we sometimes sacrifice who we are. We edit ourselves to fit in, dilute our opinions to avoid conflict, and suppress our needs so we don't disappoint others. Over time, this can lead to a deep sense of disconnection, not from others, but from ourselves. That's why the courage to be disliked is so powerful. It's the willingness to stand in your truth, even when it makes others uncomfortable. It's the strength to hold on to your values, your boundaries, and your authenticity, even when it risks disapproval. It's about choosing self-respect over social acceptance, knowing that not everyone will understand or agree with you and being okay with that. The fear of being disliked is deeply rooted in our psychology. Historically, being part of a group was essential for survival. Standing out, going against the grain, or challenging the norms could lead to exclusion, which, in early human history, often meant danger. While society has evolved, that primal fear of rejection still lingers within us. We hesitate to voice unpopular opinions, to set boundaries, or to pursue unconventional paths because we fear what others might think. But living a life dictated by the approval of others is a fragile existence. It's like walking on a tightrope, constantly adjusting and performing, hoping not to fall out of favor. It creates a dissonance between who we are and how we present ourselves to the world. And over time, that dissonance leads to frustration, resentment, and a sense of emptiness. We end up asking ourselves, if everyone likes me but I don't like myself, what's the point? The courage to be disliked isn't about becoming defiant or combative. It's not about rejecting others or seeking conflict. It's about understanding that living authentically means not everyone will approve, and that's perfectly okay. It's about realizing that the goal isn't to be universally liked, but to be deeply respected first by yourself and then by those who truly matter. Consider the impact of this mindset in leadership. Leaders who are driven by the need to be liked often struggle with making tough decisions. They hesitate to give honest feedback, avoid difficult conversations, and bend to the will of their team even when it goes against what's best for the organization. In their effort to maintain harmony and approval, they compromise on their values and vision.